August 15th. For South Korea, this is a huge deal. It's Gwangbokjeol, which means the day the light returned. It's a day that celebrates the end of 35 long years of Japanese colonial rule, a day of immense national pride. But back in 1974, that light was almost snuffed out by a single stray bullet.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's August 15th, 1974, at the National Theater in Seoul. The place is packed. The air is thick with that kind of stiff formality you get at these big state events, and the whole thing is being broadcast live to the nation. On stage, you've got President Park Chung-hee, this really imposing figure who was seen as both the architect of South Korea's economic miracle and, well, a pretty ruthless dictator.
He's right in the middle of his big speech, talking about peaceful unification, projecting this image of total, unshakable control. And then, bam! At 10:23 in the morning, a loud crack just rips through the theater. And it's not a microphone popping, it's a gunshot. And all at once, chaos just erupts as this young guy starts running down the aisle, waving a revolver. Now, President Park, he's a former general, right? So his instincts are razor sharp. He just vanishes behind this heavy wooden podium he's speaking from. But sitting right behind him, looking graceful in her traditional Korean dress, is his wife, the First Lady, Yuk Young-soo. She doesn't duck, she doesn't even have time to react. Instead, she just slumps forward in her chair. A bullet that was never meant for her has found its mark.
So, who is this guy with the gun? His name was Moon Se-gwang, and he was only 22 years old. And to even begin to understand what drove him to do something this drastic, you really have to get into the world he grew up in, because it was complicated. Moon was a Zainichi. He was an ethnic Korean, but he was born in Osaka, Japan. The Zainichi were kind of like the ghosts of Japan's colonial past. They were born in Japan, they spoke Japanese, they went to Japanese schools, but they were never really treated as Japanese. They were stuck in this permanent in-between, outsiders in the only country they'd ever called home. And this wasn't just a feeling of not fitting in. No, this was systemic. Just imagine being legally barred from all public sector jobs. In the private sector, you're the last one hired and the first one fired. You face housing discrimination. People just won't rent to you because of your name. And on top of all that, you have to carry a special alien registration card and get fingerprinted by the police. A constant, humiliating reminder that you do not belong. So when you create that kind of alienation, that kind of vacuum, something is always going to rush in to fill it. And for a lot of young Zainichi, that something was Chung-hee. This was a powerful organization, funded and pretty much directed by North Korea. For a disenfranchised kid like Moon, Chung-hee offered everything that Japanese society was denying him. A community that accepted him, a powerful identity, and a motherland that said, yes, you are one of us. And once he was in, his path to that theater in Seoul was shockingly fast. North Korean agents cultivated him, gave him money, a fake passport, and a very simple, brutal mission. Kill President Park, and you'll trigger a communist revolution in the South. He steals a gun from a police box in Osaka, and just a week before the attack, he shows up in Seoul pretending to be a tourist, ready to throw an entire nation into chaos. But, to really get why this day was such a national trauma, we have to talk about who was lost. Because for the people of South Korea, that bullet didn't just kill a first lady. It killed the mother of the nation. You see, while President Park was this incredibly polarizing figure, the stern, demanding father of modern Korea, his wife was just almost universally beloved. If he was the iron fist, she was the gentle hand. They were the two faces of the Blue House. And look, this wasn't some carefully crafted PR image. This was real. She would spend hours every day personally reading and answering letters from regular people. She started a huge park for children, pushed for job training for the poor. And there's this one famous story where she visited a leper colony, a place people were terrified of, and she walked through, shaking the patients' hands one by one without wearing any gloves. The power of that simple gesture was just immense. This is absolutely crucial. People saw her as the conscience of this really tough authoritarian regime. She'd tell her husband when she heard about corruption or when she thought his policies were too harsh. It's even said that President Park himself, kinda half-joking, half-annoyed, used to call her the first opposition party. She was the human connection that his cold government desperately needed. So that's who was sitting on that stage, a national icon. All right, let's go back to that moment, 10:23 a.m., and break down the absolute chaos that unfolded in just 10 seconds.
It was like a terrifying lottery of fate.
So Mun's original plan had already gone wrong, so he had to improvise. His first shot actually went off by accident as he started running. The second bullet slammed into the podium, the very thing that was shielding President Park. The third was a misfire, just a click. But the fourth bullet flew true. It sailed past the podium and struck Yuk Young-soo directly in the head. The fifth and final bullet just missed everything and hit a flag on the stage. But that's not all. In the total chaos, as the president's security guards are firing back at the assassin, another tragedy happens. One of their bullets misses Mun, ricochets, and hits an 18-year-old high school student named Jang Bung-hwa. She was on stage as part of the student choir. She was killed instantly. She's the forgotten victim of that day.
And then, to make a horrible situation even worse, it gets covered up. The official government investigation just blamed the assassin, Moon Se-gwang, for both deaths. I mean, think about it. Admitting that the president's own security team had accidentally killed a schoolgirl, that's a story of incompetence. So for political convenience, that messy, tragic truth was just swept under the rug.
Okay, so let's just picture the scene here. The assassin is being tackled and arrested. The First Lady is being carried off the stage, bleeding, mortally wounded. The entire nation is watching this live, in total shock. And in the middle of all of it, President Park Chung-hee gets up, walks back to that podium, smooths out his papers, and calmly says, "I shall continue my speech."
So what do you even make of that? Was it this incredible act of duty? A powerful message to his enemies that the Republic of Korea would not be paralyzed by terror? Or was it just an act of pure coldness? A dictator so focused on the performance of power that it completely eclipsed any human emotion. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Later, his aide said that in private, he broke down completely and just wept for hours. He chose the state over his own humanity in that moment, and you have to think he paid an unbelievable price for it.
The immediate human tragedy was obvious, right? But the assassination of Yuk Young-soo kicked off this chain reaction, a series of dominoes, diplomatic, political, and deeply personal, that would end up reshaping the entire course of South Korean history.
First, diplomatically, it was a firestorm. Seoul was furious, and you can see why. The assassin lived in Japan, he used a fake Japanese passport, and the gun was stolen from a Japanese police box. So South Korea demanded Japan apologize and crack down hard on Changryeon. But Japan did its own investigation, concluded Mun acted alone, and basically refused to be bossed around. The two countries came to the very brink of cutting off all diplomatic ties.
But maybe the most shocking consequence of all was what happened to President Park himself. With his wife, his moral conscience gone, he became more and more isolated, more paranoid. He started leaning on this super aggressive chief bodyguard named Cha Ji-chol. The whole regime just got more and more repressive. And this led to a nasty power struggle between the bodyguard and the head of the KCIA, the Korean CIA. It all came to a head 5 years later when the KCIA director invited them both to dinner and shot and killed them both. The bullet that killed his wife in 1974 really did set the stage for his own assassination in 1979.
And yet, through all of this political chaos and violence, the legacy of Yuk Young-soo is the thing that really endures. Her tragic, public death just cemented her image in the nation's memory. She became a martyr, a symbol of grace and compassion that was stolen away. To this day, she remains one of the most revered and beloved figures in all of modern Korean history.
In that one awful moment, President Park faced an impossible choice. He chose the image of an unbreakable nation over a moment of personal humanity. He chose what he defined as his duty. And it's a choice that has been debated in Korea for decades, and it leaves us with the same haunting question he had to answer in a split second.